has came and gone. The Hawks have made moves. This team is now different than what they were just a few hours ago. And to talk about this, bringing back on the man himself, David Lee. This man does film breakdowns, game breakdowns of the Hawks throughout the season. You may already be subscribed to him on YouTube or following him on Twitter. D Lee for 3 is his @ on Twitter, in case you did not know. But appreciate you, David, for coming on, man. How are you, man?
Of course, bro. You know, I'm good. I appreciate the intro. Looking forward to talking through these deals. I know that probably the mass fan base of Hawks fans are sort of disappointed with these deals, and I think we can definitely, like, from a objective return value, I can see that. But hopefully, you know, we can talk through it, hopefully ease some concerns, and then talk about some like the long-term plays that a lot of these deals signify. So look forward to talking through it for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, coming into the deadline, a lot of people were just not sure what to expect. I think there were moves that needed to be made, but obviously that was impacted by the injuries. I've said if the Hawks were healthy, Jalen was healthy, and Bogey was playing a little bit better, it would completely be a different deadline. And that's the thing. The team, statistically and numbers-wise, at full strength, was a decent and good team. I mean, they had a winning record. Can't deny that. But injuries happen, guys decline, so you have to make changes. Obviously, one of the big issues, their bench, I would say, has been one of the biggest issues, just not being able to get that bench scoring. So they've made some moves. First move, we're going to talk about DeAndre Hunter. Obviously, that was the move that a lot of people did not like. Mm-hmm. Hunter moved to Cleveland for Karis LeVert, Dieng, 3 seconds, and then 2 swaps, which I know the swaps confused everybody. What was your impression when you saw this? Because obviously DeAndre has, for this version of the Hawks, been very important. But I know you touched on, even with some of the things he did really well, there were still some things he didn't do very well that also made him expendable.
Yeah, so I think Brad really illustrated this perfectly. I just finished listening to his pod about it. He basically said that a team executive texted him and said in September, if DeAndre Hunter, the Hawks would have traded him and they would have been happy to have gotten this return, but they would have been elated because it would have required them to attach a first to trade DeAndre Hunter coming off of last season. Mm-hmm. So he hasn't just repaired his value. Like, he finally had positive value for the first time in years. And I think what a lot of Hawks fans are feeling, what I've felt for a long time too, is like sort of we invested so much money into DeAndre, right? So much investment, not just pick equity, but like the extension. And he's been with us since 2019, right? And so, or 20, even longer than that. But the crazy thing is he's having his career year in year 7, right? And even in him having his career year, he still isn't what the Hawks need from that position. And what I mean by that is, like, there's really 2 things that the Hawks need from the wing position. They need versatile defenders, or they need a secondary shot creator. And DeAndre Hunter, unfortunately, is sort of falls short of both of those marks, right? So from a defensive standpoint, I highlighted some of the plays that he kind of cost us against San Antonio, but he doesn't have the consistency, the attention to detail, the deflections, the disruptiveness, and then he's not a lockdown defender. He's a solid team defender in a good context, right? And then on the offensive side, he can get to his own spots relatively easily. He was doing it really well this season, but he's at his best when he's attacking advantages created for him. So like playing off of Trey, driving closeouts. When he doesn't have a steady diet of spot up threes or driving closeouts, it can get really ugly really fast. And then when he can create for himself, he's not creating for others because he doesn't have the passing vision in the field. And so I think that's where it really came down to, because they've been trying to trade Hunter. He has underwhelmed for being a number 4 pick up until this season. His contract, he was overly paid for what he was producing. Like, he's one of the worst contracts relative to impact last season. This season, when they finally get him playing at that level, it's hard to pass that up because you know that it can go away in an instant. Like, we saw him miss 10 straight games this year. We saw him go ice cold in January. And like, the Hawks are so overly reliant on his scoring, and they're also reliant on his defense. You can't play him at the 4 for a long time, but that's where we needed him. And you can't rely on him to create offense for everyone, but that's what we were using him for. And so I think, honestly, like, for him, he gets put in a really good context for himself in Cleveland. I think he's going to be really good in Cleveland. I'm sure people are going to be like, what were we thinking? But from my viewpoint, we needed to aim a little bit differently with who's going to be playing those minutes, especially with Reza Shea already given a good floor for what he can be on that defensive end. And then now I think you get Karis LeVert, who I think can give you 60 to 80% to 85% on any given night. Like if you think DeAndre Hunter is inconsistent, Karis LeVert is also inconsistent, but he brings a little bit more on-ball stuff, a little bit more scoring ability. So it'll definitely be interesting to see what this like in the next couple months. But I think for the most part, the Hawks have like really solidified their floor. When there was a lot of questions about what we could be doing or like how much worse we would have been like if we didn't bring in guys that could contribute right now. You know what I mean? So all things considered, I don't think it's really bad.
Yeah, and I think too with that move, you mentioned how LeVert can kind of give you most of what Hunter gave you, and you've clearly seen with this team the way they've played. They're very pass-centric. He wants ball movement, and he wants all of his players to be able to pass in some capacity. That's one of the things that Quinn has mentioned when he's talked about Onyeka Okongwu is his ability to pass out of the post, how he's able to find the open guy, find cutters. That just and it seems in a normal fan watching the game, it seems little, but for what they're trying to do, it actually means a lot. Yeah. And I've seen it, and you've talked about it, how Hunter isn't really a guy who makes plays for other people. That's not his game. And I think Caris LeVert has more of that skill set to be able to do that. And I think that's one of the reasons why they felt like we could make this move. And obviously, LeVert is also an expiring contract, so it's not like things don't work out. They're stuck with him. They can get him off the books. Obviously, they have some extensions coming up that they're going to have to give. And obviously, the big question, which we'll get to later, the big Trae Young question, how does this impact him? But, obviously, like you said, it's you can make an argument if the season, like I said, we stayed healthy, would they maybe have still traded Hunter? Maybe. We don't know. Yeah. But especially now, I think they're probably like, yeah, we can afford to make this move. Now, obviously, another person in that train was Niang, and I know he's not flashy. As you mentioned, he plays fat boy basketball. Kind of reminded me of Gallo when you said that. But it's a guy who can shoot. And he's played with Quinn before. He knows what Quinn expects. Obviously, one of the big weaknesses of this Hawks team was shooting. And that was very evident during the losing streak. Just nights of just bad shooting. He's someone who can improve that. And even though he may not be athletic and, be nimble, I don't know who said it. I don't know if it was you or somebody else. They said he's a more playable Devin Rodney. So, yeah, I saw that. So and he got some run in Cleveland. So I mean they're a good team. So it's not like this man can't play. So how do you expect him to help in that second unit, especially with it looking like Clint's going to come back just from a spacing perspective and a shooting perspective?
Yeah. So I want to address a couple of things. In the chat, I'm seeing Robert and Michael talking about like how the Hawks divided his scoring and that it gave us a deeper bench. And that's how I feel too, because in a lot of ways, you're going to be able to split up the production from Hunter between Niang and Caris LeVert, right? And so coming into this season, George Niang has shot 40% or higher in 4 of the last 5 seasons, and he's been in the 95th percentile-ish in terms of three-point attempts per 100 possessions. Over his last 3 years, he's averaging over 11 threes per 100 possessions. So he gets them up. He shoots a really good percentage. The mobility is definitely a question. He doesn't move his body around well, but if he can guard in the stationary position, he has the weight and the mass and the actual size to be a 4. He doesn't have the vertical spacing, but he can be somewhat tenable at the 4 position. And so I think that's really the biggest contribution he'll bring in terms of defense, like just being a stronger guy around the basket. Like David Roddy was really bad for us because he also can't space the floor and he also gives you nothing on defense. But Niang is a legitimate shooter. Like he's a very high volume, high effective guy. And then to go back to the Caris and DeAndre Hunter point, just to sort of like illustrate the difference between them as playmakers, Caris LeVert in a pretty reduced role, he's playing with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. He's averaging 7.5 assists per 100 possessions. DeAndre Hunter right now is averaging a near career high assists per 100, and that's 2.4. So like that's a massive, massive gap in terms of playmaking effectiveness. And he's also doing it, and Dre is also a lot more prone to bad pass turnovers, stuff like that. So you bring in a guy who can handle the ball, be that secondary playmaker, bring a little bit of that three-point shooting as well, because Caris LeVert is shooting, again, for him, like a pretty high, I think one of his highest attempts from 3, and he's shooting 41%. He's very streaky. Like I said, he's never shot above 40% in his career, but it's definitely been some growth for him in terms of being able to space the floor. So I think that's the biggest selling point for me, is like you can split up the production and then you're not losing too much relative to the contract value. LeVert's expiring. It's just a little bit more flexibility because now you've been able to like sort of partition his contract.
Yeah, and I think too that, like I said, a guy who easy flexibility. The Hawks wanted to move on. Obviously, maybe include him as a trade asset in the future. They could do. None of these guys are going to be very hard for them to move, which I think is obviously, again, flexibility. That's one thing I said at this trade deadline that they wanted, and they were able to seem like they were able to achieve that going into it and everything like that. So obviously, those are the two guys who will, I'll be interested to see what Quinn's rotation is, especially bench wise. I'll be interested to see who he plays. Obviously, that leads to the second trade. Bogey traded to the Clippers. We get Terrence Mann, Bones Highland back. First initial thoughts on that for me was I really like Terrence Mann. I liked him, earlier in his career. He kind of fits what the Hawks have wanted. Guy who can guard, point of attack. Just a gritty guy. And then sometimes, he could give you a good offensive game. Obviously, that's not what he's known for, but he can do that. So he's continuing to fit what they want. Versatile guy, can guard 1 through 4. So that's something that's staying consistent. And then obviously Bones Highland is the one that everybody's kind of like, you like him or you don't like him. I said Bones Highland kind of reminds me a little bit of Cam Reddish a little bit. It may sound crazy, but like, if you remember Cam is kind of erratic when he got into the league, and Bones is kind of erratic too, and I know a joke somebody made when he got traded from Denver the year they made the championship was, Bones could have been here right now if he was willing to cut for Joker, willing to cut to the rim, and so because he's a guy he's a microwave scorer. If he gets hot, Bones can light you up, but at the same time he can be a little erratic as well. And I don't know if the Hawks are viewing him as a backup point guard here, or if that's still going to be Dyson, or if that's Krejci. I don't know. What do you think about those two guys and their fits on this team?
Yeah, I think the Bogey trade kind of helped me feel a little bit better about the Hunter trade, because my ideal return from Cleveland would have been some combination or one of the other. I wanted at least Jalen Tyson or a first-round pick. Like one of those two in the package would make me feel a lot better about it. And so, or I was also considering Isaac Okoro. He's an Atlanta, or he's not. He's a Georgia guy. He also kind of fits our profile as a 6'5" guy who can defend and somewhat shoot the three, right? So between Okoro and Jalen Tyson, who's their rookie, who's shown some flashes in the NBA, I really love him as a prospect. He's an older guy, so he can contribute right now, positive defender, stuff like that. Or the 2031 first. And so we didn't get either. I was like, okay, I'm okay with the return. It could have been a lot better. But when you bring in Terrence Mann, that's where I think him and Okoro would have been duplicative, right? So it's like Terrence Mann can now step in as that combo guard off the bench. He can give you 20 to 25 minutes a night. Him and Dyson Daniels are going to be really dynamic defensively. Like against a team that plays two guards, like against Cleveland, like having those two guys as options against a team like that is going to be really, really interesting to watch. Now the offense can come and go. He's not having a great season by any means. Like he's had a lot of struggles this season, and they also have him. I didn't realize how long his contract was too. Like in comparison to Bogey, who's getting off the books, I think in 27 or 26. Terrence Mann is on the books for 1 year longer, and he doesn't have a team option, whereas Bogey had a team option. So the financial flexibility long term, you don't have that same thing that you have with Niang or Karis LeVert, who's expiring. So I think that the way if you think he can get back to where he was last season, like last season, he was a plus efficiency guy, despite the fact that he wasn't a super like high usage offensive guy. He was plus 3.5 true shooting percentage the year before that, plus 4 true shooting percentage. And so, and if he can get to that role, he can be a play finisher. He can be competent from the 3-point line and not struggle as much as he has this season. Then I think this ends up being a really good signing, because like last year, he was shooting 75% at the rim. This year, he's at 66%. So I don't think he's lost any athleticism. I don't think it's anything like that. And I think it comes down to, okay, do you think Bogey? I think Bogey's way better than he was this year. I don't know if it's an injury. I don't know if he overworked himself in the Olympics. He's better than what he showed. So maybe for a team like the Clippers, which again isn't as reliant on him as the Hawks are, they can take that risk and say, okay, we can sit Bogey for a couple games, couple weeks, couple months. He can come back after the offseason and be fresh, right? But from our perspective, Terrence Mann is a younger guy. His decline is not related to athleticism or injuries or anything like that. He's just in a subpar situation. Okay, let's see what Trey can do with him. Let's see what Jalen Johnson can do with him. let's see what he can do in this defensive infrastructure. And so I like that bet overall, as opposed to hoping that Bogey can somehow find that spark that he had last season. Again, like if Bogey, I don't know, it doesn't feel great to trade him because I feel like he's at his lowest, right? So it's like, it's another instance where we waited a little bit too long to trade someone. Like Clint Capella's still on this team. We waited too long to trade him. But at the very least, they got something of value back. Like now we're probably either going to see Clint leaving free agency or the Hawks resign him for cheap, whatever it may be. But I think they did a good job considering the circumstances, but they could have done a much better job being proactive with Bogey, following the Olympics, following his 6 Man of the Year run. But, that's easier said than done. It's hard to be like, we need this guy. We need a Bogey bad. When I watched him in the Olympics, I was ready to start saying we're winning 45 plus games, because if this is the type of play we're getting, I'm not as worried about the secondary playmaking. I'm not as worried about the non-trade minutes. And when that doesn't happen, it just kind of gave the Hawks a bad hand. So, of course, with the Jalen Johnson injury as well. So all things considered, I think the Bogey deal from a pure asset standpoint isn't as good, especially because we gave up seconds. But I like the bet on man. I told you, I like Bones' game. I don't know if I like him in the Hawks context or on my team per se, but he's super entertaining and he still has something untapped. Like he's got a crazy wingspan. I mean, obviously the dude is like really talented and really gifted offensively. So I think the more creativity you can get in the NBA, I mean, I feel like dude's kind of all played. Like he's one of those guys that just kind of brings his own flavor. So I would like to see him get some minutes, but I'm not in love with that. Like I would have preferred, they got guys like Amir Coffey or Kobe Brown, Jordan Miller, those guys, like kind of like their younger guys would be more interested in. But I don't know. I was pretty cool on the deal, to be honest.
Yeah, and it was funny. It's funny. I said Cam too. And he also kind of reminds me, not like defensively, but like Lou Williams too. Because Lou was a microwave scorer. He was a more consistent scorer, but, kind of a microwave guy as well. And, I think people, like I said, don't really know where he fits in. I know Hawks still have to make one more move. They have to release somebody to get to the roster spot. So I'm assuming that will come tomorrow before the game. A lot of people have expected it to be David Roddy, but I don't know if that's
I think
going
Quinn
to be
likes
there. Huh?
So I think Quinn likes Roddy. So that's my thing. Is like,
yeah,
or maybe that was their play to just kind of see like if he had anything before they let him go. But I think the play is to waive him. Like I don't know. I don't see any other like reasonable path. Like you could waive Garrison. You could waive guys like Muhammad Gay. I don't see them doing that. Like just saying you could if you wanted to. I think it's Roddy. You think it's Roddy too?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, some people were wondering if it's Bones. Like, could they have just put Bones in there and then it's going to be Bones? I mean, the only reason why they're saying that is because he deleted a tweet. He tweeted about coming back to Atlanta. Then he deleted it. And people were like, oh, is he getting cut? I mean,
Is he from Atlanta? I thought he's from Philly.
He said something about, that could have been man. But I know Bones said something about coming here. Like he was like familiar with the area or something. So I don't know if he's like played here in some capacity or what. He, like I said, he deleted the tweets. So I don't remember what he said. I know Terrence Mann said that he was happy about being back.
Yeah, that's weird because I think he's from Delaware. I remember when I watched like him play one-on-one on YouTube, and like I could just tell he's from the north from the way he was talking. But I do want to read this real quick. Just kind of like Bones Highland's combine measurements. Like he was listed at 6'2" without shoes, which I think he might be smaller than that, but his wingspan is 6'9". Like he has the potential to be a real. Oh, he played OTE. I did not know that. Okay,
that's the connection. OTE, overtime elite. Okay.
I didn't know that, but like he has a ridiculous wingspan, right? But to Steven's point, he says the biggest thing pointed towards Bones being waived is that the newish Hawks front office hate the idea of guards who can't play next to Trey. That's a fair point. I think the vision was like, okay, someone like Kobe could do that. Someone like Dyson, of course, can do that, can play next to Trey. But I think taking a flyer on someone like Bones when you're really lacking that offensive creativity, you don't have to pay him a ton of money. I could see him getting run. I mean, they do need some real playmaking in that position. And this year he's at his assist numbers aren't too bad. He isn't playing a ton of consequential minutes. Like keep that, it's all with a grain of salt, but like he's averaging about 6 assists per 100 possessions, about 14 assist points per 100. So he could definitely come in and inject some on-ball creativity. And I think that's also kind of what Karis LeVert will be brought in to do as well. But I don't know. I do hope we keep him, like, but not as like this is someone we're gonna keep for a long term. But I think like he's a fun player. Like I enjoy watching him play. So
Yeah. I enjoyed watching him play. Listen, I've had friends tell me stories. One of my guys told me one day he took a girl on a date when he's a Miami fan, and this was when Bones just got into the league. And he said, I come out of that game thinking, who is Bones Highland and why did he destroy us? And it was just kind of funny. It's just funny because like he has the ability to kind of pick it up.
Yeah.
And so I think it'll be interesting to see how he kind of mitigates himself with the entire roster. Because like I said, they revamped the bench. That's something they need to do. So I'm curious to know, what do you think the bench is? At first, does this make Quinn go 10? Or does he stay with 9? And then if so, outside of who you know is starting, who are the 4 or 5 guys you think are going to be the bench?
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like the starters are kind of in question too. Like, is Niang the starting power forward, or is it going to be Larry Nance? Like, I feel like there's been a lot of hesitancy to put, whether it's Niang or not Niang. There's been a lot of hesitancy with Larry Nance, who I thought kind of came in when we acquired him. I was sort of imagining him as the backup 4. So, like to Adam asked, is Barlow starting? I don't think so, but I do think like what they were trying to do this like leading up to the trade deadline was seeing who could step in at that position. So that's why you saw Muhammad Gay start some games. That's why you saw Don Barlow play them like the next couple of games. And so I think from what we saw from both of them, they can kind of give you some minutes there, but they're not really ready. I say like Barlow may be more ready defensively, but I think it comes down to Niang or Larry Nance. So whichever one of them that starts, the other one will be on the bench. Then you got Karis LeVert. I think he's definitely going to be in the rotation. Then I think it's probably Clint Capella if we don't end up waiving him or buying him out, which I don't think will happen. And then we have Veet, so that'd be 8. And then I think it probably comes down to Terrence Mann. I think Terrence Mann is probably in the rotation too. That would probably be the 9. And then from the 10, it would probably be Bone/Keaton, depending on the night. That's what I think. Like, so I think that's how we're really like. And there's also a question saying, what free agents do you think they want now that they have expiring deals? So I was not familiar with the free agents in this class. It's not great, to be honest. You have LeBron, but he has a player option. Like, he's going to opt in. Obviously, he wants to play with Luka. You got a player option for Kyrie. Brandon Ingram is an unrestricted free agent. It would be pretty funny to take them from Toronto, but I don't think that's super likely. Chris Middleton's a free agent. Julius Randle, Bruce Brown, Miles Turner. Not names that are jumping off the page. I think I would probably throw some money at Naz Reid, maybe. I think
Naz Reid. I think he'd be a fan favorite down here.
Naz would get a lot of love down here for sure. Pretty sparse class. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'd have to kind of see who else.
Well,
go ahead.
I know they had mentioned the Hawks did call the Suns about KD, and I know people think this is KD's last year because they've listened to offers. Do you think Hawks revisit that? I don't, or maybe they'll make a call, but I don't think it'll be serious. But I don't know if that's something you think they revisit, since people think that's leading to a split.
Well, KD is entering unrestricted free agency the following summer. It's a 2026 summer. At that time, he's 38 years old. So that doesn't move me. Like, that kind of scares me. I was actually just about to say that, Gabriel. I was about to say Nickeil Alexander-Walker would be a really good pickup for depth. I think that the Hawks do need to eventually find that guy who's going to be that secondary shot creator. Could Jalen Johnson step to that role? I think that's still like to be determined. But looking at this draft class, this free agent class right now, I don't think there's a guy out there who I would throw a ton of money at to do that shot creation outside of Brandon Ingram. And I would do it to spite Masai for sure. But the Hawks do have a lot of room because of, I have to look at the books again, but I'm pretty sure we cleared 40 to 50-ish, maybe something around that in terms of cap space. The other thing is Trey is eligible for an extension this summer. So that will probably give us an indicator on what Trey's mindset is. So, like, it doesn't mean if he doesn't get an extension, he doesn't want to be here, but it may just be like he'll put that pressure over the Hawks to like try and deliver for the 2025-2026 season. I think that would kind of give us more clarity. I think it'd probably be like a 30 to it'll be a super max for sure. So it'd be a pretty expensive deal, but I mean, obviously, like, he's our franchise player. So That's what you got there. Josh says, do y'all think there's a scenario that the Hawks got better? So I want to ask you, like, how do you feel about that, Brice? Do you think there's a scenario we got better?
You know, this has been something I've been thinking about because I know a lot of people think name-wise we got worse. I think in terms of just players, it's easy to say that. Like, I don't think we got anybody better than the DeAndre Hunter in any of these deals, if that makes sense, right? And you can maybe even in some situations you can say bogey. But I think it's about what they want to do and what they want to be and how they put it all together. I think that's what they're trying. And so for me, I think that's why, like, literally, like, if the bench gives them more production than they've gotten during the last 10 games, they kind of are a better team. Now, obviously, this is assuming Yucca continues to play really well, Trey plays well, Dyson plays well, you know, those guys, Riche, you know, maybe plays like he did during that 3-game stretch. But, I mean, because there were nights where I'm like, we're getting 12, 15, 18 points from the bench. And I'm like, you're putting all the pressure on the starters. So if they can, like, at least give the Hawks 25 to 30 a night, that will be a big help to those guys. And I think with what they got back, I think that they can. It's just going to depend. And I think what they're trying to do fits better. Because I think at the beginning of the year, I said, if you look at the Hawks rotation, 9-man rotation, you had about, I would say, 2 negative defenders. Like, just like they're bad. Like which is Trey and Bogey, which Trey tries. So, like, it's not like when I'm saying he's like I think you will hold up. I think you muted yourself.
Okay. I gotta say, you gotta put Garrett in there too.
Well, that's why he wasn't in the original 9. That's why I said the original 9 guys.
Gotcha.
And so, for me, it was Trey and Bogey. Trey tries, Bogey tries, but obviously we know there's just limitations there.
Yeah.
And then everybody else pretty much can defend in some capacity.
Yeah.
Kongu, DeAndre, Dyson, Zach. You know what I'm saying? And now after this trade, if I just look at the first 9, your negative defenders are Trey and Niang, you would probably say. And I guess I don't know if we consider LeVert a negative, or he's just kind of like.
I think he's closer to neutral at this point. It used to be pretty bad.
So neutral. I think that you've gotten yourself to a point where you need more bench production. You can get more bench production, and you keep winning with your starters, and then you can get back to that team basketball. Because that's how they were winning games during the streak, because they were getting 7, 8 guys in double figures. Yep. And then they were playing team defense, and I think that's what they wanted. And then they improved shooting. They improved shooting out of the straight. That was a big issue. They could not shoot. So in areas, it's almost like maybe straight talent they didn't improve. But in terms of weaknesses, I think they improved, if that makes sense. And so that could lead to better results. I mean, I've told people, I mean, the East isn't going to run away from this team. I mean, they're 3 games out of the 6th seed. All they got to do is go on a 5-6 game winning streak, and then they're like, we're talking maybe not even having to play in the play. Like, and that's just what it is for the team right now. But talent straight up wise, yeah, we definitely did not get just better from a talent perspective. That's why I made a comment on my tweet. I said they've created financial flexibility for the extensions, but you mentioned guys who weren't big names, but there's definitely guys in there who's like, yeah, if they come off the bench, they'd be great for the team. Yeah. And so that's kind of how I view that for what they have available. Obviously, what your biggest need next year would be like, okay, who's the backup center, right, to a Kongu, and then probably adding another scorer-ish guy, right? Because I feel like your starting lineup set. It's going to be should we trade Dyson, Riche, Jalen, Kongu. You're not really moving that. So your bench is what you're really recreating. What about you?
No, I think that's all great points. And it kind of reminds me a lot of how the DJ trade felt. Like from an objective talent standpoint, we got worse from that trade, right? But the upside of Dyson Daniels, giving him more usage, and then the fit of Dyson next to Trey is an entirely different calculation than just an objective talent standpoint, right? And so I think what they're trying to do, to your point, is just sort of surround guys with more viable rotation players. When we play our bench, it is awful. Like that first quarter, when we played V. Krejci, Larry Nance, and Garrison Matthews together against the Spurs, we were a -7 in 4 minutes. That lost us the game. Like that stretch legitimately lost us the game. And it's not Larry Nance's fault, but it's guys like V. Krejci and Garrison Matthews who get just exploited by bigger guys. And you don't have the center play to accommodate for that. So it's really good that we don't, hopefully, like, again, I do think that Quinn Snyder had to do what he could with the roster. I think he sometimes would play Garrison way too long. I think he would leave Larry Nance out there way too long. Like he played him for 11 straight minutes in that Spurs game, for example, so he's not without his faults. But I think now he has the optionality to be like, maybe I don't have to play Garrison Matthews for 15 minutes or play Larry Nance out there as the only big. Like we can get guys like Terrence Mann who may not be as strong or not maybe like as tall as a traditional power forward, but he plays bigger than his size. Someone earlier in the chat was like, you would never know. I think someone said like Dre does not play to his size. Like he doesn't rebound like he's 6'8". So I think that's a really big difference. I think we got better, but I don't know if like, I think our floor is so much better than it was even against the Spurs. Like, and I don't know when these guys will play. Like, I think honestly, we probably won't see it until the next game. I don't remember when the next game is, but we won't see
I'm
it.
assuming they play the Bucks tomorrow, but the Hawks haven't announced anything yet, which they can't play till they announce it, I think, which means the league has made it official. So I'm thinking, I think we play the Wizards Saturday in a back-to-back. I think that would be the game they would come. Plus, it's a back-to-back, so it'd be nice to get some fresh bodies. You know how it is. But that's what I'm thinking, where they would play.
Yeah, I agree with that. That'd be a nice game to get some reps in. We saw it's interesting too. Like when you see a team add a new player, sometimes you see them like try and play their to try to adapt to that guy. It's like the Spurs, for example, were running the ball crazy. That's not what they did before De'Aaron Fox got there. So it'd be interesting to see like, okay, what does the spacing look like with Niang out there, Karis LeVert in those first couple minutes? I'm not a big Karis LeVert guy. Like I kind of feel like I've kind of hated on him for a long time. And like, he does have a little bit of DeAndre Hunter syndrome where he will like Dre hasn't done as much this year to his credit, like over dribble the ball and like take it out of the offense. Karis LeVert can hijack it, but Bogey was also prone to that too. You know what I mean? Like sometimes like tough shot makers, that's what happens. Overall, I think that we got better, but it's going to be more like, I can't say that confidently. Like for example, like to your point, if Jalen Johnson doesn't go down, I think this deadline is approached entirely differently.
Yep.
I'm not saying that, we don't end up getting off a Bogey, or we don't try and see what we can do with Clint, but this Hawks team would not have lost 8 in a row. I'll tell you that for sure, if Jalen was healthy. So that changed the entire calculus of the season, because at that time, the Hawks were 7-2 against some of the best teams in the league. They were a +15 with Dre, Jalen, and Trey on the floor. +15 in about 700 minutes. That's a real sample. And that's evidence that those 3 guys, when available, were very good. The issue is DeAndre Hunter has not been this version of himself at any point in his career. And he's also not available and in a reduced fashion as well. So I think that's ultimately the calculus there. And it from an emotionally invested standpoint, seeing Dre get traded when he finally started playing the way we needed him to, that kind of hurts. I'm not going to lie. You know what I mean? But it's like, it comes down to business, man. Like, it's tough. I think this is an interesting question. Jamar said, out of all the new additions, who do you think will have the biggest impact? I don't know. Like, I think sneaky Niang could be this, but I think I'd probably have to go. Let's break this into like long-term, short-term. I think right now Niang stepping in gives you really solid minutes at the 4 and some much-needed spacing without being a physical liability like Garrison Matthews. So I think right now you can slot Niang in, and he's going to do a lot for us that like you won't be able to really see. But I think I agree with the comments are saying. Long term, I think Terrence Mann has the potential to be a really great addition for us. But where you stand on that?
Yeah, I could go with it. It's crazy. Because we've had so much issue, I think, at our guard spots coming off the bench. To me, I think Mann may have the biggest impact, short term and long term. Because I just think I'm really, like I said, that's why I'm so curious about the rotations. Because like you talk about Dyson and Mann on the floor being like great defensively, like ferocious defensively. And I feel like having that, it will be so big. Plus, is a guy who at times they've used Terrence Mann and the Clippers kind of to bring the ball up and play make at times. So again, the biggest thing they want if they're not going to have a quote unquote true point guard, is just guys who can play make. So, you run LeVert, Dyson, and man, and it's like, all right, now I have 3 guys I can kind of feel like, all right, we can move a little bit. And then Niang can help with spacing and so on and so forth. Now, obviously, when Capella plays, you got to figure that out because, the spacing gets a little limited then. But when you have Okongwu, it's like, all right, spacing's really good, especially now that Okongwu is hitting threes from the top of the key now. So, I mean, that's that. Hey, when he started raining those, I was like, where was this all year? But, I think man will have the most impact out of all of them. But I definitely think Niang can do some things for us that we need. Because clearly, when you make these investments, there's not going to be everything that you're going to get. You're not getting star players that can do everything. There's specific skill sets that they need, and they acquired those things. They went after needs from a lack of skill on the team perspective. So I definitely think, man, for sure can do that. Now, one thing I want to get to is someone had mentioned about trade Jalen stars, right? Dax, Zach, are building blocks, but shouldn't stop you from upgrading, right? How do you feel about that? I feel like the thing about this starting lineup that is, because people have came out on Twitter, because obviously, people have their opinions, people are upset. They're like, this starting 5 can't win a championship, or blah, 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 blah. But I could also make the argument we don't know what the ceiling of this lineup is, because Zach's a rookie, Dyson's playing for the first time. I mean, if Kongu plays like he did last night, I mean, I don't think that's going to be an issue. We know what Trey can bring to the table. Do we know if Jalen? I mean, pretty much what you want from Jalen is just what you saw before he got hurt, just playing at that consistent 20, 10, because Jalen was one of the best rebounders in the game. People didn't know that. And, what do you think that's something the Hawks should maybe look at as like, hey, we can, or if there is someone better, let's upgrade? Even if there was someone, who would you think that would be if there were to move someone out and move to the bench?
No, I think I'm entrenched. Like, I'm fully invested in Dyson as a starting 2. Like, there is no reason why I think he would ever be moved out of the starting lineup. Like, I agree with what the chat is saying too. But for Brice, it's more so like he needs reps to improve. So it's kind of hard to find that middle ground of like, how do you get someone who's better than him right now without impeding his development? And that doesn't mean you don't look for it, right? Like, for example, that's why I was a big Brandon Ingram proponent, especially in this year, because Brice can sort of keep that split up at that position, but he can also toggle at the 2 or the 4, whatever it may be. But if you go and trade for a guy that comes in and has a long-term salary, and like, for example, we sign like a Chris Middleton, which I would hate, but if you sign someone like Chris Middleton and he's at that position, then it becomes a lot tougher to be like, okay, how can you get Brice the reps he needs to be great, right? And so I think it could be tough for that position. I think I would be like cognizant and, just searching to see if there's any upgrades. But I think the big point where it has to be like a constant, just sort of like being aware is at the 5. And the reason why the 5 has to be in question is just because when Onyeka plays like he does tonight or last night, you see what he can be. Like, there was a lot of comments about like the hub on offense, like the passing, the spacing. Like, he's very, very dynamic he's grown to be a much more dynamic player, right? And it's just, I'm not as concerned about the size. Like, I think he can play bigger than he is. Like, we've seen him stand up Giannis, beat guys in big moments. But if you're going to draft a young guy, like, I think you kind of do that same method you did with Drake. Like, you take a common Malawatch, or do you take an anchor big in this draft and then see how Onyeka reacts? Like, is Onyeka able to sort of understand that there's going to be a guy that he may be having to transition over to? It's kind of like my approach, but I don't think I would go and take a guy like I think Miles Turner's an unrestricted free agent. I don't think he's that good. Like, I'm not a big Miles Turner guy, but like Miles is the guy who would move Onyeka to the bench because of his shooting and because of his shot blocking, even if he's not the level defender that Onyeka is or the level passer. So I don't think you need to be hasty with that decision, especially if it's at the 3 or the 5. But like people are saying in the chat, we haven't had a true big in a long, long time. Like, we haven't had a 7-footer since pre-Al Horford, I'm pretty sure.
What do you mean? No Dwayne Dedman?
No Dwayne Dedman. If we go talk about Dwayne Dedman, then we got to talk about Alex Len. And like, these dudes are not real dudes. You know what I mean? I mean, 7-footers, yes, but like not good 7-footers.
Nah, I get it.
So I don't know. I feel like it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
I understand why you would want to evaluate that though. Like I understand from that question, like you want to try and keep improving no matter what. I get it. I think Dyson's entrenched. I think Onyeka has earned the chance to start for a little bit longer. Definitely for the rest of the season. But as far as Zach, I can understand why people would want to evaluate like options there too. And I think that's the most obvious upgrade position, right? Because he's going to take time. So
yeah,
I get it.
Yeah, and the thing is, I said, obviously, the Cleveland game when Riche had 20 points and went perfect from the field, that was just like, I felt like that was what the Hawks think he could. Like, the finishing, tacking the rim, aggressive, confident. It's like, if he could be like this, like, we're going somewhere. And I think that's what I think makes this process what the Hawks are going through so difficult for fans because, again, I said this on a show I came on before I came on here. So many Hawks fans want to win, and they want to win right now. They want to know we're going to be a top 4, top 3 team right now. And the problem with that is the Hawks have truly taken a route where they're like, we want these guys to grow, and that will take time. I've mentioned before, development is not cute. Development is not sexy. It's not any of that. It can be a bit ugly at times when you're going through those rough times. But you're hoping that you get to that final product, which is the diamond, and then you see, okay, we see what we got here. Like that's why, and this may transition us into the Trae topic. I said, if you're Trae Young, if when we were healthy, we were a winning team and we were in the playoffs and we beat some of the best teams. Like you played and you've seen it, right? And so when this decision for him comes up about what he's going to do, I truly think Trae believes in Jalen. I think he really does. I think he believes in Dyson playing with him. Like, it's not a situation where he's like, I don't believe in the talent you putting around me. It's like he can technically say, I mean, shoot, when we were healthy, I was excited for where we could go. And so coming into this offseason, I've said the way this season ends will really dictate some things for him. Because if, let's say, the Hawks are able to savage it, let's say the Hawks are able to get back to 500, maybe a game or two over 500, right? Let's say they're able to do it. He may look and think, we had injuries, we went through all this stuff, and we still finished here. Now imagine when we get everybody back, if we can stay healthy, we're probably going to make, maybe you would think, so a couple of moves over the offseason. And so now people are like, and now Trae may look at it like, I mean, I want to see this through, at least. Mm-hmm. But obviously, this summer is when the extension, that's when the conversation will be had. Do you want to sign with us, Trae, long-term? We'll give you the max, assuming that the Hawks are wanting to give him the max. Or will Trae say, I'm not sure? Because some people think if he doesn't take it, he's just going to ask for a trade. I said there's a scenario where Trae will basically say, I'm not going to sign it. I want to see how it goes next year. I don't want to be traded right now, but I want to see how it goes. And so, my thing with that is just, that's what makes this a convoluted situation, because it's not an obvious answer. Everything that everybody's saying is just an assumption, what you think is going to happen. If you don't think it's going to be good enough, you just assume guys like Riche and Zach and Okongwu won't get to that level and Jalen won't stay healthy. But if you do, you're hoping the best that they will reach that level and he will stay healthy. So where do you stand with Trae Young right now and how the rest of the season plays out in his decision? Because I've said that Trae doesn't seem like a guy who's like, I guess I wouldn't call him a selfish superstar. Like, get me out of here. I need this, dude, need that, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? Like, he just wants to feel like, are we going in the right direction? And before the injuries, you could say they were. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, so Trae's eligible for a 30% max contract because he's at the point where you get the veteran super max. And I think a lot of the reporting coming into the season was like, okay, he wants to see, especially from the national media, was like, okay, if things go wrong, he could ask out, yada, yada, yada. I've never gotten the sense that like he doesn't believe in the core, just like what you said. And I don't remember if it was you or Malik who tweeted this, but it was basically like a quote from him in preseason where he's like, it's a special duo, but we have to be on the floor. Basically saying like Jalen has to be available or we're not going to have, we're not going to have that special connection. I don't think he's frustrated with the injury stuff or anything like that. And I don't even necessarily think if he doesn't sign the extension, is that an indicator that he doesn't buy in long-term. But I do think it's fair for Trey to put some pressure on the front office if he feels like that's what's going to get something done. And I think if you clear all this space, which they have, and you have these trade exceptions, which they have, and you still have some draft pick flexibility, which you have, I think you should explore other options. But that doesn't mean overextend yourself like you did with the DeJounte trade. Trey advocated for that. They made it happen. It didn't work, and they were able to save themselves. That doesn't happen often. A lot of times when players try and play GM, like LeBron with Russell Westbrook, it doesn't turn out well, and when things go wrong, you don't get a get out of jail free card. And so I think in general, I would hope that Trey has learned from that. And it's not like entirely on him, but like it's not just about the star power. It's about building a cohesive roster. And I'm sure that he can realize that when they were healthy, like to your point, they were good. The summer will kind of like determine where that stands. It is a lot of money to commit to Trey long term. He is the franchise guy. He is the entire roster is built to his strengths and his weaknesses. Okay, this roster was built for Trae Young, and it's built to also ease Trae Young off of the super heliocentric style of basketball that he was playing prior to Jalen Johnson's emergence. Right. So you build a roster tailored towards him, but it's also a little bit more versatile and not as dependent on him. That's the whole point. But like there's not a lot of rosters in the NBA that I feel like are either have the assets to get Trey or have an interest in Trey, right? Like a lot of guys have their point guards. So let's say he does want to ask for a trade. I think the only place he could go is Orlando or Miami now, but there's not like a ton of different destinations for him. He's not going to immediately upgrade and be on a contender. Like obviously he's going to bring a lot of talent, and wherever he goes, like if it's enough defensive infrastructure, they'll be a good team. But I think he loves Atlanta. I think he likes Jalen. I can see frustration building next season, right? It has been a long time where we have not been a serious team or seriously respected team. So I definitely would expect frustration to build. Like he's a competitor at the end of the day. I'm sure the other guys in the locker room feel the same way. They want to start winning too. They just don't have the equity that he has in the league. I wouldn't be worried up until that following season. And I think we'll get a little bit more clarity with the extension. But that's not the end. That's not the instant means, right? Like he also has a player option, so he can just opt out. If he doesn't get that extension, he'll be an unrestricted free agent. So my sort of like Trey panic meter isn't even at a 3 right now. Like I'd say like I'm at like a 2, and if that. Like I think he's a pretty rational guy. You know what I mean? He likes to hoop. Like someone said in the comments, he's not gonna hold out. He's not gonna do nothing like that. If we had the same regime and they were constantly trying to duck the tax, which they still are. But if they were doing that and not also trying to be conducive and build like, make a trade like Dyson or bringing guys like Don Barlow, like these small moves that have made the roster better, I think we could be in a worse situation. But I'm not concerned about Trey, honestly. Like we'll get more answers in the summer, and then from there we can panic, I guess, if we want. But I don't know. I'm not really worried about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I don't. Obviously, people were talking about Trey's dad retweeting the Haynes thing he said, and it's one of those things where like that's why Brad was like, I mean, this is nothing new. Like this, no one's really saying anything groundbreaking. Yeah. They're just saying he wants to win, which he has said on multiple occasions. He's apparently supposed to drop a podcast too. I'm sure he's going to say it on air. So I don't think anything's going to dramatically change from that perspective. I think that, and this one thing also I've said, I truly think Trey and Quinn are tied together. Yeah. Because I think Trey has constantly, even through the losses, still says, we believe in Quinn, we believe in what he's preaching, we believe in what he has never wavered from that. And so that's why for all the people who hate Quinn, you have to realize that Trey loves Quinn. And he knows that Quinn is making him a better player because of that, because of this partnership. And so if there was rumors about Quinn's status, then yeah, my panic meter would be a little bit higher. Because I don't think Trey probably wants to go through another coach, and especially in the process of where we are. But I think that the Hawks front office, for as much as we want to crap on them, they look at the situation and said, listen, we knew this was going to be a process. And we won't rush this process. Obviously, it's unfortunate that we've had some of the things that have happened, but we're not going to rush things. And so I think Trey is in the same spot where, because I think at the All-Star game last year, he said in an interview, he said his plan is to play his contract out. So that's why it's like crazy that people just think he's just going to be like, yeah, screw it, I'm out of here. Like, yeah, if the Hawks somehow went on a 20-game losing streak, yeah, I'm sure Trae Young would be like, yeah, this might be time. But if they're competitive, and like I said, the Hawks are going to play one more than 82. They're going to be a play-in team at least, if not maybe competing for that 6th spot. Maybe. Again, we have to just see how the team comes together and how what it looks like. But because you're telling me if the Hawks make the postseason, and I mean, probably the matchup you'd want if you had to face one of the top 3, I'd say is the Knicks, just because I feel like that is a better matchup for you, because in my head, I've broke down that matchup. I was like, realistically, the key to that matchup is the Dyson Jalen Brunson matchup. If Dyson can control Jalen Brunson, Hawks have a much better chance of winning that series. Where if Brunson goes crazy, it makes it much harder for them. You kind of saw in the first 2 games, Dyson was able to control Jalen. Hawks won both those games. The 3rd game, Dyson got into foul trouble. That allowed Jalen to get going, and New York won that game. So I feel like it's a very, cookie cutter. Boston, even though you beat them twice, I mean, it's Boston, not still your greatest matchup. And then Cleveland, that's more just, do you think they can get over the hump, right? And because, like I said, Trae Young's going to show up. Like, people forget with Trae Young, too. Like, the last time he was in the playoffs, he averaged, 32 and 10? Like, I could say that my franchise player has showed up in the playoffs. Like, we talk about Tyrese Halliburton and guys like that. Like, oh, have they done it yet? You know what I'm saying? Like are they it like that? We questioned it. Where Trae, he's done it, and he shows up when it's time. So that's why I'm not too concerned either about his future with the team. And, I think, like I said, he'll just play it out. Patient guy. See what happens. If things look good, if he likes the direction, because it's just about feeling. If he's feeling it, we'll go into the offseason. He'll continue to post it. His clips every day, working out, doing his thing, and we keep moving like nothing. And the media will have their narrative. And everything. But David, I do have a question. And we brought his name up a couple of times, but we haven't actually talked about him. And he's a guy I think right now it doesn't seem like he's going to play again. But there are some things there I like. And that's Barlow. A guy who 6'9", but he plays bigger than me a little bit. Like he's shown some rim protection even at his height. I think one thing people said about him was he can score. He can put the ball in the basket. He just defensively is where you're going to have your questions. And I think defensively he's came along a little bit. I've said that I wouldn't mind. I personally said that, honestly, I would rather him play than Larry Nance. And that's just me. If we were going to have a centered spot, just because I think, Nance, outside of one game, hasn't really gave you a lot in the last few, where Barlow, I feel like every time he's played, he's giving you something, And even the Spurs game, he only made 2 shots. Like, it felt like he had that stretch, I think, in the beginning of the 4th quarter, or where he really, or maybe it was the 3rd, where he just really gave you great energy, defense, active. And I'm just like, I don't know. And then it makes sense. Barlow has played in the NBA. He's not like, first time called up. Like, he's played with Wemby. That's why they said you could tell he wasn't scared of Wemby. And so, what do you think about Dom? What do you think about him?
No, I really like Dom. I was really excited when we got him. He was a really interesting dude at OTE, super talented for his size. I think the thing about Larry Nance was, like, he was just so efficient before he hurt his hand. Like, he was really good at offensively. Dom's shot is kind of ugly.
Either baby
it might have been the first game he played. He came in an airball, or maybe that was the Indiana game. He came in an airball, and then we got the rebound. They passed it back to him. He airballed again, and then the following 3, Reza Shea hit the side of the backboard. And I was like, okay, I know where this game is going, right? But I think Dom, he deserves a lot of minutes, like people are saying in the chat. I think he definitely needs it. I think he definitely deserves it. I think the defense is intriguing enough. For everything I've heard from Larry, you were at Media Day, right? I think you were.
Yeah, we were.
So, like, Larry Nance is such a great personality. Like, I think I told this on my pod, but Larry came and sat with the media, and he was just kicking it. Like, he's a super nice guy, a great vet, very candid with the reporters and with the locker room. And so he's an asset by himself, like, just by his personality. I don't think he necessarily has to play to be worthy of, like, getting a contract from the Hawks. If I'm being quite honest, he's only making $11 million. He's also expiring, right? So I think the Dom and Gabe, they need to figure out, like, are these guys real guys? And I think both of them have shown flashes, so I would love to see them get more minutes. And I don't think he's a center, and I think that complicates it too, because if you want a 4, the backup 4 probably has to be able to space the floor, unless you have a backup 5 who can space the floor, and no one plays a backup 5 who can space the floor because 5s who can space the floor are so valuable. So it kind of goes into that, like, okay, how valuable really are you at a tweener position where you can't space the floor, but you got some defensive upside and you can finish. So it's kind of tough. Personally, I would be playing him. The current version of Larry Nance, I would be playing Barlow over him, but with Clint out, you don't have a center, like anyone who has center skills. Like Barlow isn't ready to anchor defense by himself. If you thought it was bad with Nance, it'd definitely be even worse with Barlow. But he's a lot better on the ball, engaged. You know what I mean? He had some moments against Wemby. Well, I stood up. I was like, okay, like, you know, he got that block against him, and then he had another block that ended up being called a foul. Why do you think Barlow can't play center? He's not big enough, and he also just doesn't have the instincts as a center. Like, he's not strong enough rebounder. He's just not a big enough guy. He doesn't play like a center. He plays like a forward, you know? So you said
a bigger 4, maybe.
Yeah. You where he could start right beside Onyeka and help with rebounding. The rebounding help is nice. The added rim protection is nice. He can be a discount Jalen in some aspects, right? So I get the vision. I just don't think I think he's more raw offensively than you may imagine. And that's what makes it tough. Because the team already struggles offensively. Where do you stand on Kobe, though? Because there's a lot of questions about Kobe right now. I'm a really big Kobe fan. Like, I loved when we got him from the draft. I loved him pre-draft. I love what I saw from him in the limited minutes. The unfortunate thing is, like, once you miss your first 2 years, there's not a lot of precedence for guys becoming good NBA players. Like, off the top of my head, the only guy who really did that was Embiid and Randall. And I'd have to go back and look at more, but, like, when you miss that much developmental time, it's just really tough to make it up, especially as a guard. So how do you feel about Kobe? Do you think he has any place long-term, or what do you think?
I said that with the trade today, and Bones is staying. I said it does make Kobe expendable. The thing is, again, if you're going to do it, you have to move him. Like, if you don't think he's gonna be your backup, you have to move him. Like, I don't see you keeping Kobe as your third point guard, because then it's just like, that's your lottery pick. You're making him your third point guard. I mean, you really can't send him down to the. I mean, I don't think in his third year you can send him to College Park. I don't know. They may still send him down to College Park. I don't know. I mean, does he play Summer League this year because of that? I mean, if he's healthy, we don't even know if he's going to be healthy enough for that.
I'm not going to lie. Like, it is so frustrating because I think he would have been so great for this Summer League team. Like, it would have been so much easier for Reza Shea. Like, the struggles we saw from Reza Shea after that first game, I don't think we see those things as Kobe's on the court. And I think some of this is mismanagement by the Hawks. Like, there's no reason, unless the medicals were saying otherwise. But I don't believe they did, because why would you opt for surgery in January? If he had this injury over the summer and they decided to just rehab it, that's a bad decision, because there's no need to rush Kobe back. You have Keaton Wallace in the pipeline. You have the minimum contract space available. You could have made something work. You know what I mean? So I think that was really bad mismanagement, and it set him up for failure. Because if he would have got that surgery in the summer when it happened, he would have been available right now. He would have been playing right now. And it just really sucks because he needed these minutes bad. I know, and again, I'm trying not to be too high on him. I really love him, like, as a player. I think he could have stepped in. Like, pre-Dyson, I was like, this guy's going to be a real difference maker. I haven't given up on him personally. I understand why the Hawks may be evaluating other options. I don't think it's smart to give up on him entirety. I don't think Bones Highland is that dude. Like, I don't think Bones is like – Bones has never been here's the thing. If you can't be an impact player next to Nikola Jokic, it doesn't matter who else you can play. You know what I'm saying? Like, no one makes it easier than Jokic, especially for a guard. And so I think Bones kind of like that same Cam Reddish syndrome, where you might – dudes was saying Cam Reddish was like the best player. I know you remember that Edwards interview. He was like, Cam the best player on the team.
They made it like Cam is crazy.
Right, like Cam played like he thought he was the best player in the NBA. He thought he was the best player in the NBA, and that's why he just got traded to Charlotte, right? And that's why he didn't have a role in New York. Like, he didn't have that mentality. So maybe if Bones comes in with that mentality and he's more contained, right, and he's not trying to do too much, I could maybe see it. I just don't think you can play those two slight guys. You can't. There's just no way. You cannot have Bones and Trey both be 155 pounds and 6'2". It's not going to work. The whole point of having a backup guard for Trey is that they can replicate some of it, but they're not going to be exploited the same way defensively, because no one Trey's size is bringing that offensive value. as entertaining as Bones is, he's not bringing the offensive value to offset the defensive stuff, right? So that's why I'm still in on Kobe. I think you still explore what Dyson can do off the ball, on the ball too. Although you do want to kind of maintain him with his defensive stuff. Like, you don't want to overwork him too much.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Sure.
I don't want to be delusional about it, but I still Bleav in Kobe. Again, like that's the full caveat that I really love him as a player. So
yeah, and I think this, like I said, it's just tough for Kobe because it just depends on what the Hawks want to do there. It just depends on what they like. I mean, I think you look at all your options. You look at free agency. I mean, listen, even though the draft picks don't look great, you're going to have draft picks unless you trade them this year. Kings pick, I think with them seeming like they're going to be competitive, they get that pick, and then you get the Lakers pick, and, do you look into that? You add a couple more guys to the development system. It just really depends because you really need to have answers at that spot. Now, I think it's interesting with Dyson getting so many reps at backup point guard because I think Dyson, has point guard skills. And so it's like, that's why it hasn't been like at first, I think it was a little rough just because he was, he really wasn't, I don't even think he was practicing in a point guard role really like that when he got here. So he was like, oh, I got to go back to doing this. And I think you've seen him get more comfortable with it, but it just really depends. I think they have so many avenues they can go down realistically. And like I said, maybe that is something like they said, they dangle out there. I know some people may still be high on Kobe Buffkin from around the league. So I think the Hawks have those options available to them. And I think that they have to look into everything and see what it works because everybody knows the backup point guard spot is a position that they need to fix. It need to kind of have solidity at that spot as well. So I think Kobe, some people are out of him. Some people think he's more of a 2, not a 1. I mean, it just kind of depends on what you translate. There's some people obviously who are super high like you are, or you could be super high on him like Matt. To a level where people I'm not even trying to be mean. I'm just saying you can be very high on him like that is where I'm not saying that you need to think he's all NBA and he's easy to play, but like you can be high on him. So I think that makes things interesting. Like I said, Bones gets play. I guess he'll get an opportunity to show, like if Quinn said you'll get an opportunity. Hey, Bones, you have a chance to show you deserve that spot. So I'm crying at this comment. I can't believe somebody mentioned Matt on YouTube. listen, guys. Matt is hilarious, bro. Like that man stands behind his beliefs for this team.
Comedy, bro. Yeah. I was gonna say though, like it's a different type of hunger when you have to fight for your career. So Bones probably knows this could be one of his last shots. Okay, so he might take a little bit more serious this time. I was gonna say too. So Steven asked, what was the plan for Kobe if they got Tyus Jones in the summer? Like they clearly wanted. They clearly Bleav in Kobe, but then they also did pursue a backup PG. And I think there's two things about this. It is impossible to get a guy like a top tier backup point guard when your starting guard is Trae Young, because there's no way you can offer them a big enough role, right? There's just no way.
Your minutes are limited too.
Minutes are limited, and then the money is limited. Opportunity is limited. Chances to play with Trae are limited. Like it's a lot of things that make that really complicated. And I don't really know how real that Tyus Jones stuff was. Like I'm not plugged into the org, so I don't know. But like I never thought that was gonna happen. Just because why would Tyus do that? Like why would you not just go play for a team that's gonna promise? Like Phoenix said, we'll start you. To the detriment of their season, they said we'll start you. Like you can't compete with that, no matter how much money you pay him. So that's why I think exploring guys on it. That's why Kobe was so important, because this is a younger guy who can play next to Trae. It doesn't have as much of a contract value, and he's not expecting a ton. And that's where also Bones, cheap flyer. Let's see if he can do something. Keaton, 2-man, see what he can do something. It just makes more sense to try and figure it out that way, because you'll never get that premier guy. Like we were talking about free agency. If you look at the free agency class for point guards, I mean,
is it time to bring back DeLon Wright?
I was gonna say Ben Simmons, an unrestricted free agent.
He's always interesting. I would love Lonzo if we could get Lonzo. That would have been great. I feel like Lonzo would have been good for what they were trying to do.
Yeah, they just extended him, which is cool. I'm so happy he got that deal. I think Bones is restricted.
Yeah, he's a restricted free agent this year. So I guess the Hawks will have their rights to match an offer if somebody wants him.
Mm-hmm. So there's options here. Oh, Brad said I trust Brad. That's my GOAT. So if Brad said they wanted Tyus and they wanted Tyus, I don't remember that. But like, I think I can't remember if that point was Kobe rehabbing. He might have been. So maybe. I know he got hurt in summer league. I don't remember what the reporting was like.
Yeah.
I am shocked Hawks didn't even trade for bench depth, cheap and Chris Boucher or Bruce Brown with their expirings. I think we got bench depth. Karis LeVert, George Niang, Terrence Mann. These are real rotational guys. Like these are guys who can play good minutes. Boucher and Bruce Brown. Boucher, I think the way Boucher, low-key, he's been really good. He fried us both times we played him.
Raptors have been really good, and he's raised his level of play.
I think it's the worst thing ever that the Raptors started hitting this stretch, because then they were like, okay, maybe we have something here, and that's when they ended up buying our Brandon Ingram.
They're trying to make the play in and maybe be a sneaky team.
Either they're going to do that or they're going to sit Brandon Ingram. I don't really know. Like it could be either or. But that's, I don't know. It's strange. LeVert is a streaky. Yeah, LeVert is streaky. We said earlier, like if you think Dre's inconsistent, you might be frustrated with Karis LeVert from a night-to-night basis. But he's still more talented with the ball in his hands. Like Karis LeVert was actually running the offense in Brooklyn. He was a special offensive player in Brooklyn. I'm not saying that's what he's going to bring, but he can create a lot more, man. So
yeah. Do you think? Where do you see Krejci kind of fitting in? He's kind of obviously been a guy who's broken into the rotation because of injuries. A guy that can do different things, play multiple positions. His three ball has been better in the last about month or so. He's given them a little bit more of his predict. I always said my thing with Krejci is he does all the other things, but he can't give you 2 points a night. He got to at least give you something more just to justify. Do you think with these additions, and then with this offseason coming up, and maybe the Hawks making other additions, where I feel like Krejci's a guy who's constantly in limbo a little bit, like a guy that you trust. Like he's the first guy. Once you get out of that top 9, top 10, we're going to Krejci. But like, where do you see his value with this team? And do you think there is a high ceiling here for Krejci? Do you think he can get to a point where he can be a mainstay in this Atlanta Hawks rotation and what he can give them?
I don't know if it's a high ceiling per se, but I think he could definitely be like a long tenured Hawk just because he fits what we do so well. I think like what kind of holds him back is just the size. Like he's a really great 2 guard, but if you have to have him play the 3, that's when you're in trouble. So if you let him chase guards and that's what he has to do defensively, I think that's a lot more tenable than trying to have him guard. Like anytime you see him guard someone who's bigger than him, it's a problem.
Yeah, because Krejci's skinny. That's the problem.
He's very skinny. Like I can't remember if it was Harrison Barnes or Stephon Castle. Trey got cross-match in transition, and he pointed to V. He's like, V, come take this guy. I'm gonna peel off to, I think it was Chris Paul. And then Harrison just blew through V. Like he was Trey. You know what I mean? So it's like it's kind of tough because V's willing to be there. He understands the game. He knows where he needs to be defensively, but he can only do so much in some situations. So it could be a little bit tough. I don't know. I feel like I think I identified him like last season. Like he played 14, 15 games for us, and he's really special, moving the ball well, had our pace popping. Like when he gets downhill, he can be really special in those moments. So I think I think like the 8th and 9th man spot is kind of like penciled in. Like, okay, Krejci will always be here. You know what I mean? Like he's earned this spot. Terrence Mann could take those minutes, maybe, but I don't know if you can. I think ideally, like, he's a 2 guard coming off the bench, like as opposed to like a Garrison Matthews. I think that's where I would want to see. Like he takes Garrison's minutes and then Terrence Mann takes Veet's minutes. It's kind of like how I would envision it. So I think he has that.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
Like Travis said here, he said they're fantastic in the bench guys. Like that's facts. Like they're great. Like as your 10th, 11th, 12th man, that's elite. Like a Veet Krejci, come on. Yeah. But like if he's constantly having to play big consequential minutes, I think that's a representative that you don't have to have.
Him finishing games, things like that. You're like, you rather, do something a little bit different at that spot. Quinn. Let's talk about Quinn. Obviously this is his
2.5 kind of.
This is the second full one, right? Second full year. What has been your impression of Quinn and what he's done with this team? I've said that he's developed players. They've developed players here. That's something that Nate didn't want to do. And that's something they prioritize in the next head coach. Hunter got better under him. Kongu got better under him. Trey got better under him. Everybody's gotten better under Quinn, right?
Yep.
And so that's why Vic Krejci is where he is now, and et cetera. And you've even seen with some of the G League guys why they're able to at times give you some really good games. What kind of job do you think Quinn has done? I know he's been someone that some people just question his rotations at times, question some of the obviously we know about the timeout in the Spurs game. You know, not every coach is perfect. Every coach has a blunder. But what overall is your thoughts on Quinn? Because obviously he's trying to build something. He's talked about trying to build a culture and identity. And do you think he's been doing a good job of that and getting the players in place and putting the players in position to be successful?
Yeah, no, I definitely think he has. And I think the funny thing is, like, if I was Quinn Snyder, because you remember he committed to the Hawks like early, and then multiple teams opened up coaching head spots like Milwaukee, I think Phoenix, like so many, Detroit. And so at some point I was like, man, did he really want to coach for us, or was it more so like he just wanted to get back into coaching? He took the first job available. And I think he might have had his pick of the litter if he waited a little bit longer. But I think he's fully committed because like a lot of the moves that they're making are Quinn Snyder driven. Like I can tell this from his process. It's not him making the decisions, but it's more so like this is what the type of player Quinn wants. You know what I mean? So like I think the Dyson move was very much a Quinn move. I think going to get someone like Niang, even though that's not the target, like that's someone who knows how to play with Quinn's system. So I feel like Terrence Mann too, like, you know, that guy probably pretty much ended his tenure in Utah. So I think the thing about Quinn is like he has a very high level vision, or like a very thorough vision for what this team can be. And I love talking to him at the press conference because like he gets very into the details. You know, sometimes he can give you some press conference, you know, PR answers, but like when you ask him about basketball, like schematics, he's on top of that, right? He's done some really inventive stuff this year, come up with some zone looks, some lineups. The lineup from game to game can be a little iffy. Like I can definitely admit that sometimes he puts out dudes who really shouldn't be out there in terms of like for too long. But I think he has like a really great approach to what this Hawks team can be. And I believe in his vision, and I like that he believes in Trey, and I like that Trey believes in him. And I think that's what matters at the end of the day. Like he's maximized his roster as much as you can. Like I don't think many coaches could have done better with what was given to him. So that's where I stand on him. And like I just really think that he's just a really cerebral guy, which I think is important for a team that hasn't always played like a high level basketball in terms of like, we're going to read and react. We're going to be smart with the way we attack things. He's not without his flaws. The end of game stuff has been iffy. The rotations, stuff like that. But I'm a big fan of Quinn.
Yeah, same. I'm in the same boat. I feel like he's done well with what he's been given. I think, like I said, him maximizing a lot of the talent that he's given. I mean, even though DJ talked about he didn't like his role, DJ got better here. DJ became a better shooter here. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like that's why I think, and I've talked about the CBA and how that's impacted things because teams don't want to be in aprons. Like I remember there was a tweet where they named like 6-7 teams who are in the first apron, but if you're in the first apron, you cannot sign players that have been bought out.
Yep.
And that's why teams are like trying to stay away because like think about, oh, we need to make a couple more upgrades. Well, you're restricted from making an upgrade in this way. I mean, no, like, you know, that's tough. Like, that's why they said the Suns pretty much have to just trade one of their stars away if they're going to want to have room of roster flexibility. It really handicaps you. And so a lot of teams are going the building route because that's the route where you can control because guys are on rookie deals or smaller deals. If they develop and get better, you can pick and choose who's important, try to see who you can interchange. And that's how you have to build out people. I've always said this to people who always talk about the Hawks spending. Obviously, yes, the Hawks, you know, if there's an opportunity to spend on a certain player, sure. But I've also said this. I've been like, I use the Suns as a prime example. You can be aggressive and just throw money at guys, and then you could be the Suns. Like, that's what that looks like. You know, or think about the top teams in the East. Cleveland, Garland developed, Mobley developed. A lot of the guys there, they developed, and then they added pieces like Mitchell and Jared Allen and, you know, boom, you know, Ty Jerome. I mean, you know, Ty Jerome wasn't doing anything at first, and then now he's a really viable bench player because it developed. Boston, we know Tatum Brown drafted there. You know, and then they had guys that they were Eastern Conference Finals team to an NBA Finals team with a lot of guys that developed. but they were also in position, okay, we're so close. Okay, now we can throw money because we're so close. That's why they have so much payroll, because they know we're one of the top teams in the league and can win a championship every year. Peyton Pritchard, as example, is another example. New York. I mean, New York's the only team that you can maybe say is buying because everybody in their starting lineup was bought. But at the same time, I mean, it's New York, and they put themselves in a position where they've bought smart. They haven't just thrown money at random. They did that before, and that's why the Knicks never, weren't great. But they bought smarter, and then boom, right? And even in the Western Conference, same thing. Denver, 2 core players, Joker and Murray, developed. Michael Porter Jr. developed. Same thing with Oklahoma City. That's mainly development. And they developed all those guys, drafted all those guys. Yep. And so there was patience that needed to be had there. And you had to have a coach and a system that could develop guys. And so I think that's what the Hawks are trying to do. You develop the core and then you add. But like I said, some people are like, I need it now. I need wins now because I'm scared Trae Young's going to leave me. So, I mean, that's just my take on how they're trying to do things. And like I said, the CBA's making teams do that. That's why you've seen some weird trades. Like, because it's like teams are like, I got to get contracts off the books. I got to dump guys. Because like, I got to get under.
Yeah, your point about like building, there was a graphic that I really liked. It was like all the homegrown talent in the NBA. So Memphis and Houston are 2 other teams that fit into that category. There's been I think there's like Memphis has 12 different players on their roster who have only ever played for them, right? So like that's a farm system, and that's what I think the Hawks are trying to replicate. If you look at the top like teams in the NBA, Denver, Memphis, Houston, OKC, Boston, Cavs, those teams were all built organically, right? Like you have to find yourself a Jokic. You have to find, like those things come with the draft, but it's a value in being in continuity, in like bringing guys back year after year after year and investing in a core that makes sense. For the Hawks, the core that makes sense is Trae Young and Jalen Johnson. And now it's about who else can fit around them. Can you make those things work? We know Trae and Jalen work. So I definitely agree with that. We haven't talked about from the Cavs perspective, right? So there's a question here asking about like, where do you feel about the Cavs? I think the Cavs were contenders regardless. People were giving them 2015 Hawks comps. They were always better than us. Like that 2015 Hawks team was like the epitome of the power of friendship, right? Like I love that team. I'll never forget them for the rest of the
power of friendship.
But there's no better feeling.
Everybody had an injury that's the Teague ankle. Everybody had an injury, bro. They could have got one game if they were healthy.
Yeah, like the fact that Tabo got his leg broken and then they ran over Kyle Korver's ankle, and then we had guys make up. It's ridiculous. Like no one will ever give us that benefit of the doubt. They just remember us as a fraud team, which isn't fair. But that team, I always felt like the Cavs were a step above us, and that was like my belief in Mobley, Garland, and Mitchell. All of those guys are better players than what we ever had on that team, right? And so I do think what DeAndre Hunter can do is come in and step in as that 5th scorer, which they've never had consistency at that spot. Like they had to, like Okoro was their best defender, but he was a liability offensively. Niang is fat boy basketball, can shoot the ball. He's a liability defensively. LeVert, too inconsistent. And for that role, he was a little bit overmatched. Like he's not great as your 5th starter. He's a guy you want to come off the bench and kind of run offense. You know what I mean? They got Ty Jerome to do that, so he's not as necessary. And then you have like guys like Dean Wade, Sam Merrill, who bring like varying levels of that. But I think Hunter comes in as like, I'm a 6'8" wing. I can create my own shot. I can spot up from the corner. He just gives them a lot of size, a lot of versatility at that spot. I think they definitely got better. Like do I think they're better than Boston? No, but I still think they're I think they could give Boston a lot of trouble. And I think that I still have them above New York just because I think New York is a little bit more reliant on Brunson than you may think. Like to your point, when Dyson was able to take Brunson out of the game, that Knicks team looked completely different. They're still really scary offensively, but I think and until they got Dyson in foul trouble, like he couldn't do anything against Dyson in the space anyway. So I don't know. I feel like they're definitely better for sure.
No, I mean I think Cleveland's definitely better too. And another thing really is one of the big issues was I think them defending Boston. Because, like, you really don't want Mitchell guarding Tatum or Brown, really. Like, if you think about Okoro, right? And then, Mobley, like, that's fine. Mobley's a good defender, but Hunter gives him the ability you can throw Okoro and Hunter at Tatum and Brown. And now you can free everybody up a little bit more. Donovan doesn't have to expend as much defensively, and that gives them some opportunities to then, create more offense and things of that nature. So I think it'll help them from a matchup perspective. And listen, if he's giving them 20 points almost a game off the bench, because I don't know if they're going to start him or bench him. Bench player, if he stays on the bench, he can stay in the 6-man running. If he starts, then obviously, he'll just, be a good starter for them.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I think Cleveland got better. And I even think the Clippers, they won at shooting. They traded 2 of their, even though I think I saw something that said man is 40% off catch and shoot this year from 3. His overall 3, I think, is lower than that. But I think they said, I don't know if you can confirm that, but I think I saw somebody say 40% on catch and shoot threes this year. Which, playing with Trey, that would probably be to his benefit because you get plenty of those.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, I think Clippers obviously said, hey, we can get the old Bogey here. And Bogey hasn't played in a while, and we don't know if that's can help him get his legs back and getting him more rest and getting him ready to go. So, that may help for the Clippers to, like I said, another guy who, with the way they've built their team, hard-nosed team, just wanted to add more shooting, create more spacing for them. With Kawhi and those guys on the floor, and Norman Powell, who's on a I hate Paul George revenge season. I think, I think the Clippers are made a good move for them.
No, I definitely agree. From their perspective, it's like a low leverage move too, because I'm pretty sure like Bogey's money will come off the books pretty relatively soon too. So it's not too bad.
I think after next season, he has a player option.
Yeah. So, and he also is just like, they're not going to ask him to do a ton, they're going to put him in the platoon role. They're going to put him in like, okay, we might need to run this pick and roll, but they're not going to ask him to go out there and create offense like we are. So I think that's kind of like, I think that in some ways I just think guys got put in roles that make a little bit more sense for them, so that may in the end game make those teams better. Like to your point, they were really bad, like as a shooting team. I don't remember exactly the numbers on what they were doing from the 3-point line, but they were pretty bad. So I think it's pretty, not a bad trade by any means for any team. Like I don't think either team got fleeced either, though. You know what I mean? Like it's not like we got completely robbed in these transactions. I think, it's kind of like, we're always going to overvalue our own players. You know what I mean? Like I kind of thought Hunter would be able to get us back at first, but that's because I've seen the value and the growth of what he's been doing. But for the Atlanta, I think they're like, well, we've had him for a long time, but we're like, we don't think that he's that level player for that long. So yeah, Terrence Mann is shooting 45% from 3 off catch and shoot, but that is admittedly on just 1.4 catch and shoot 3-point attempts per game, which is in the 7th percentile. So very, very low volume, but he is shooting it pretty well in terms of off the catch. And that's from this season. I'll look at some other seasons as well, and I'll get you all the numbers on that.
Yeah. Okay.
But
because honestly, you got to think about all the easy opportunities Trey's going to provide. Yang, easy looks, provides easy looks for the Bird, easy looks for man. And like I said, I don't know if they're ever going to play Booms and Trey together, but you would think, I don't know if they're ever going to get to that point where they need to play them together. Because they were comfortable playing Keaton with Trey together, but that's just Keaton because Keaton is able to fight defensively at least. It's kind of crazy because there were times when we basically asked him, "Hey, can you guard this much bigger player than you?" Just because because you're a dog defensively, and just try. So yeah, I would think that would be what they would hope could merge. Because I think every time you make an addition like that, when it comes to shooting, you're going to get looks. Because the Hawks really also a part of the stretch of shooting that they've been struggling with. They miss a lot of open threes. Bro. It's not like they're like taking all these contested. It's not like the only person who took a lot of contested threes was like Bogey because he'll wait for you to get over to him, then shoot it. But outside of that, everybody else taking open threes and just bricking, and it's like, we can just make these. It's just so many games where like if we just hit a couple more threes, like the Detroit game is a prime example. When it's like we got down, but the reason why we got down as much as we did and could never come back, we just couldn't hit no threes. Like you don't even have to hit it like at a high clip, just hit some. And I think that's something that if they can hit those, especially since Quinn wants them to put up threes, and that's why I'm curious about LeVert and Highland because those guys, you give them a green light, they'll start shooting them up. And Quinn gives all his players green lights because he's like, that's what we need. We need you to shoot. We need you to be aggressive because that makes the defense have to take you seriously. If they know you're going to pass it up, they're going to play off of you. So, I mean, could it be dangerous giving them a green light? We got to see.
Yeah, I think this is a good question. What things do the Hawks need to keep doing or implement to make the 6 seed or above? And what things do they need to do a better job of for us to clinch? Like, do you think that there's anything that they're not doing, or that you think that is another move, or like, do you think it's just like kind of getting these guys to the system, hopefully getting a better percentage from three? Like, do you think it's just like will kind of like all take care of itself, like just by having like a stronger bench?
Yeah, here's the thing: the Hawks had a formula when they won. Play good defense. You get obviously good scoring from your starters. Trey gives you about, even though he's not giving you 30, 25. You get someone else who can get you close to 20. You get double-digit scoring from like 6, 7, 8 guys. You don't lose the 3-point battle by a lot. That was the biggest thing, was like, don't get blown out at the 3-point line. If you can keep it close, the Hawks were winning a lot of 2-point battles. They just weren't winning 3-point battles. And so if they can keep that close, then you can make it. They've also gotten to the line a few bit, make free throws. And then if you do that, that is your formula to winning. I said this too when they were winning. I said the Hawks have a very small margin. They're not like Boston, who they can play bad and still beat you just because they're just better than you.
Mm-hmm.
They have a small margin. They have to play a certain way. And so I think they're still in that same spot where if they can get 6, 7 guys in double figures, play some good defense, just don't turn on turnovers. Gotta cut down on turnovers. Because the reason why they lose to these bad teams is they're turning it over 20 times. At the end of the day, a bad team can even beat you if you're turning it over that much. Now, listen, I've said that, I think sometimes as fans of the game, if you are not a star player, we view you as you're either great or you suck. And so I feel like it's hard for a lot of people to view role players as good players because they're not like moving the needle for you, but they can move the needle in terms of what your team needs. And so, if you're telling me LeVert gives us 13, 12 off the bench, and then Man can give us 10 to 12, and then Yan can give us like 3 threes a game or 4 threes a game, and things like that. I'm like, all right, so you're getting about 35-ish points just from those three. And then Clint, if he has get you something, Clint give you like 6 to 10. Now you got 40 points off the bench. Now the starters, they score at least 60, 65. That's 100, 110. And you play it, and you have a good defensive game. And then if you have a game where Trey goes off, or Kongu has the game he just had, or Dyson gives you a strong game, or Ricochet gives you a strong, that's where you'll see them winning games. The problem was, it's like, I watched that Spurs game. You look at it, you see everybody, top 4 guys. Oh, really good. And then I think highest point total off that was like, what, 6 points, 7 points? And that's where I'm kind of like, where the Spurs had like 6 people in double digits. And that's what I think they have to get back to balance scoring. High assists, around 30, 35 assists is that sweet spot. Is when they're playing for real. Because I've seen them play well offensively. Like, I feel like they have a good system going offensively at times where it's like they're moving it well, they're good in good looks. Like, it's not the offense is not working. It's just they're missing shots. But I feel like they've done some good things where they could just start hitting some stuff and making some good plays. And that's why I'm curious with such a ball movement-centric style. How does a LeVert, how does a Highland, how does a Man fit into that? Because now, obviously, we also can admit they pass too many shots up at the rim. And I'm like, just take the layup. Like, you don't have to pass it. Like, I feel like they're going up. Oh, let me see if somebody's open. Like, no, just take the layup. But I think that they definitely, if they can do that, I think the Hawks can kind of, because if you look at the next few games, for the Hawks, they play Milwaukee, right? I'm sure everybody's going to expect that to be an L, right? But you never know. Play Washington, could be a win. Orlando's kind of fallen down a little bit. Plus, even last year, I mean, the Hawks and Orlando play each other. For some reason, that's a really good matchup for both teams. They just play each other really well.
Yeah.
Right? Play the Knicks. Obviously, that could be so-so. Orlando again. Detroit. Miami. Even though, they've gotten some new guys. I mean, those are all winnable games for them. Like, they play the Heat in a back-to-back later in the month. And then, like, your toughest game for the rest of the month is the Thunder at the end of the month. Hawks could legitimately go. I could see them getting like 5-6 wins if they play well, if they play like they need to. If they play they've been playing, then obviously this can get ugly. But, that's where I think they are right now as a team. And so, and like I said, I think the Heat are the 6th seed right now. So obviously that'll be a big 2-game set potentially coming up. And they're battling Detroit too and Orlando. So they're playing 3 teams above them in their next like 8 games.
Yeah, and it's a couple of things I wanted to share. There's something called a tension index, right? So I saw someone say like the Hawks games are up and down. The tension index is basically like how often is the game staying at like a 50-50 win probability. So like how often are teams basically in the game, right? The Hawks are second in that, which means that they essentially have like the highest leverage games of like they're not getting blown out for the most part, right? They're keeping games really close, right? Last season, so mind you, we're second in this metric this season.
Mm.
Last season, in the DeJounte Murray era, we were kind of similar, but not nearly as high tension. But where you see the biggest difference in this team from last year is the clutch performance, right? Last year, we were a bottom 5 team in the clutch. The offense was dreadful. The defense was even worse. This year, we have the 6th most wins in the clutch. We have 15, and we're 15-12. We had a better record before this losing streak because even as we're losing games, the Hawks are in these games down to the final stretch against Minnesota, down to the final stretch, Indiana, Detroit, the first Toronto game, and even against San Antonio, the same thing. Like they just haven't been able to come. They either dig themselves a big hole or they're just not able to execute down the stretch. So I think a lot of that is because they're losing so much momentum when Trey's off the floor. And so by bolstering the floor, hopefully you see a little bit less of that variability. But the good thing is they've been able to stay in these games regardless. So I think Travis was like, is it because of inconsistency in rotations? I don't think it's the inconsistency. I think it's the fact that Quinn had to play non-NBA players. That's just really the reality, right? So now they've got 3 rotational guys that are in the rotation without giving up their core. Let's see what they can do. And hopefully we just get some more minutes too. Like I would love to see them. It seems like they kind of have had him on our minutes restriction. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
kinda,
hopefully
he did Wemby a little bit last year. If he plays well, if he plays really, really well, I notice Quinn will let him play at the end just because, he's playing really well. But yeah, I hope that they let him play, let him continue to grow, let him, continue to, do his thing. Obviously, they're going to need him a little bit more with Jalen. Obviously, it's a great opportunity for him without Jalen. So we're going to have to just see how that continues to go as we continue to move forward. But, David, I think this is a good place to stop, man. We've been going for a good minute, man, talking hoops, man. Good hoops conversation, man, for sure, man. I appreciate you coming on. Let people know where they can find you, man.
Of course, bro. I appreciate it. So my ad is Bleav43, all platforms, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. But I post on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for the most part. And then YouTube, I'm sorry. So y'all definitely please tap in. We'll definitely have a video. I actually saw like someone tweet like, what's a Hawk without their wings? So I think that's going to be my next YouTube title because I really like the way that sounds. So we'll like dive into like the Hawks, like why they had such a great start to the season in some aspects. And then what happened. Oh, yeah, I'll type my at too. But this is my at on all platforms. I'm also streaming on my YouTube right now. So if you go to my page, you could go there. King Philip said, I think y'all talking about trying, man, like, try to keep it balanced, try and keep it nuanced. Definitely appreciate y'all tuning in and hopefully like you'll keep up with all our content going forward,
Yes, sir, man. Appreciate y'all for sure. Everybody who tapped in tonight, appreciate all you coming into the stream. If his YouTube, my YouTube, I checked it from my YouTube, we at least at like 180 at some point. So we had some people tapped in tonight for sure, man. We definitely tapped in. Subscribe to David, man. Obviously, guys, for me, Brice_2K across all platforms. Bleav in Hawks is available on any podcast platform available out there. If you're on the way to, work, at lunch, whatever. We talking hoops, talking Hawks, whenever the biggest things happen. Been a very busy few days with the trade deadline, obviously a hectic time, but definitely appreciate you guys. And if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, like the video. Definitely. Obviously Hawks playing in tomorrow. So I'll have something on that tomorrow, depending what happens. Sometimes on losses, I'm like, especially if it's a back-to-back. Especially if it's a back-to-back, I'll sometimes wait to the second back-to-back. But we'll see. Tough, and everything like that. So like I said, man, David, like I said, I appreciate you, man, talking hoops with me, man. Great conversation. Always. Trade deadline is over with. New look Hawks coming your way. Don't know when they're going to play. They may not play against Milwaukee, I think against Washington, but they're going to be out there soon, and we'll be able to judge this team in its new version and see what happens moving forward. But that's David. I'm Brice. We'll see you next time.
Y'all be safe.